So this build is just about as easy as it gets. The entire thing is constructed of 2x4s, a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood, and some screws to connect it all. And here I forgot to hook up the second dust hose, so that's why you see a bunch of sawdust coming out the front. And while I clean that up, let me show you the basic idea of this workbench. You can see that this is very simple, and if I remove the top surface, I'm left with a top frame, a bottom frame, and 4 legs connecting the two. So with that, let's get started on the top frame. And I should also mention that this is almost identical to my outfeed table / main workbench that I built a few years ago. Also, Bruce Ulrich recently built a table for his CNC that's very similar, so go check out his video after you're done watching mine. I started with the outermost pieces of the frame to make a box. For all these connections, I'm pre-drilling with a countersink bit and then driving in some 2.5 inch screws. And I'll be sure to leave links for all the tools and materials that I use for this build in the description box below, so if you're curious, go check those out. And I will mention those are affiliate links, which means that if you click on them and make a purchase through them, I earn a small commission, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. So if you choose to help me out in that way, you are awesome and I really appreciate it. Once the outer frame was put together, I evenly marked out where the center supports would go and installed those as well. Now pre-drilling isn't entirely necessary here because the wood isn't likely to split like it would at the end of the board, but I did it anyways. It's just nice to have the screws countersunk as well and also have a little bit of consistency. After checking that it was square, I had the top frame done. And with the help of TV magic, the identical bottom frame was made as well. Next, I cut the 4 legs to length and could begin installing those to the top frame. Now it's important to notice here that I'm assembling this workbench upside down. So I started by laying my top frame on the ground upside down before adding these legs. I used a squeeze clamp to hold the legs in place before pre-drilling and driving in 4 2.5 inch screws in each leg, making sure to check for square along the way. With the first leg installed, it was simply rinse and repeat for the remaining 3 legs. Next, I cut 4 inner leg pieces to length and installed those on the inside of the outside leg pieces I just installed. I hope that makes sense. Since I'm building this upside down, I rest the inner leg pieces on the underside of the top platform. Then, when the table is flipped over, these pieces will provide direct support under the top platform, instead of relying only on the screws from the side. And with the inner legs installed, I could set the bottom platform in place and secure it with even more screws. In order to make this workbench mobile, I needed to add some casters. But first, I needed to add some blocking in order to have enough material to mount the casters to. For this, I just used some scrap 2x4 pieces and then another full-length stretcher piece to give it some strength. With the blocking in place, I could mount the casters. Now, it's important to make sure that they can fully rotate before mounting them in place. Ask me how I know. I took a speed square to square them up and then pre-drilled the mounting holes. Then I attached them with some screws, but I think I might come back later and replace these screws with some bolts just to give them a little bit more strength. With the casters in place, I could flip the bench over and give it a test spin. Alright, so now that I've put this 8x4 sheet of plywood on top of here, my first reaction was, man, that'd be nice to have 8 feet of work surface, but I don't need that for the CNC. So my next thought was, well, I built this basically the same way that I built my workbench. I've just got it built out underneath there with some drawers. Maybe I can swap that out. But then I realized, or I remembered that I raised this bottom shelf up a ½ inch. So I was gonna swap those cabinets and put them over in this one, but that's not gonna work because now these cabinets are a ½ inch too tall. So my third plan of attack is I'm going to unscrew this top, which is 6 feet long, from that one, put this old top on my new base, and then put the new top on my old base. And that will accomplish a few things. That will accomplish I only need 6 feet of work room for the CNC over here on the new base. And then I can overhang this side, which will be the front edge of the off-feed table over here. So we'll get that front edge that much closer to my fence and to the back of the table saw. And so I'll have a lot fewer smaller pieces falling down in this gap, which has kind of been an issue. And I just haven't gotten around to extending this out. So that's gonna solve that problem. Then on this side, where I have approximately 18 inches hanging over there, I can just extend this frame out on the base a little bit further, and then I'll have a nice area on the end of my workbench. I can pull up a stool underneath there, and if I ever want to like sit down and tinker on something, I can do so on that side. So I think that's the new plan of attack. I'm not too worried. I know you can see like the coloration between those two. I don't really care because that's going to be covered up with a piece of MDF for the most part anyways, because that MDF will be the sacrificial board. So let's get after that. So like I said, I'm basically taking the old top and putting it on the new base, which is my CNC workbench. And then I'm putting a full 4x8 sheet of plywood on the old base, which is my main workbench. So one thing that you guys might be wondering is, why did I make this workbench 6 feet long? And the answer to that is because Onefinity actually puts out a few machines. I have the X-50 Woodworker, which is a roughly 32 by 32 inch cut area. But they also put out what they call the Journeyman, which is a 48 inch X-rail. So down the road, if I ever feel like I'm being limited by this 32 by 32, I can always upgrade this X-rail to the 48 inch X-rail. And I have plenty of real estate over here on this side of the workbench, and I don't have to rebuild it. But since this is my first CNC machine, I just really wanted to make sure that I enjoyed it first, and that I could start making the things that I wanted to, maybe turn a profit down the road, before going, all out and buying the biggest machine that they offer. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this entire project. It's a super simple build, like I said, and you can honestly knock this out in probably about an hour or two. Now, I did build this for my CNC machine, but like I said before, I actually built a similar carcass to this a couple of years ago, and it's sitting right over here, and I've kind of built out the bottom area, and it's my main workbench. So you could easily build this carcass and then build out this bottom area to whatever your needs are. With that being said, you may notice that this entire bottom is empty right now, and the reason for that is I just want to start using my CNC machine and see what this kind of develops into. I really don't know if I want drawers or doors or shelves or whatever down here. So my hopes is that once I start using this machine, that it will kind of influence what I want this bottom area to look like. But one thing I do know that I want down here is some type of dust collection. And for right now, I think that's just going to be a shop vac sitting down here. So that'll occupy some of the space. If you guys enjoyed this video, it'd be awesome if you could hit that like button down below. That just really helps me grow my channel, and it also tells YouTube that this was a decent video and maybe it should pass it to some other people to watch. And while you're down there, consider hitting that subscribe button as well, only if I've earned it. That way you're notified every time I release a new video. I really appreciate you guys watching, and until next time,